Hey, Wonderhussy here. Can you believe it's been over a year since I've had my Toyota 4Runner? Boy, time sure flies when you're having fun. And I've had a lot of fun in this thing.
From Yacumba to Yellowstone, from Santa Barbara to Santa Fe, I've already put over 36,000 miles on this beast. And I love her more with each passing mile.
Apologies for all the mud. I'm up here camping in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado. I had to get away from the miserable heat in the desert this time of year, and I figured I might as well do a little searching for the fen treasure while I'm at it. Anyway, mud or no mud, you can tell I've had a ton of adventures in this thing. This right here is from one of my very first adventures in my new rig. I backed into a tree while I was trying to find a campsite at the Sinkyone Wilderness on the beautiful Lost Coast in Northern California. These pinstripes, which you can barely see through the mud, are from when I was cruising around the Central California boonies trying to find an abandoned Superfund ghost town. I don't remember where that one was from, but I'm sure it was a good time. And my running board here got bent when I was ill-advisedly trying to follow an aggressive off-roader friend up what he called a road near Delamar Ghost Town. I learned my lesson there. I am not interested in going up any crazy road just for the sake of doing it. Unless there's an abandoned cabin, a hot spring, or the fen treasure at the end of it, I'm not interested. I know my dick is big enough, and I don't need to prove a thing. But none of these dents and dings bother me at all. They just give my car character. I didn't buy this thing to go to the mall or take little Timmy to soccer practice. As long as everything is good under the hood, that's all I care about. And to that end, I make sure to keep up with all the recommended maintenance at authorized Toyota dealerships. I want to drive this thing for a long time, at least until the internal combustion engine becomes obsolete. And by then, who knows what kind of crazy electric off-road cars they'll come up with. Now, when I first got this rig, I had all this advice from people telling me what I should buy to trick it out. But after a year of off-roading and camping in it, I've realized I don't really need any of it. I've never really felt the need for a light bar. Even in the deepest, darkest woods, my brights are usually enough. I don't really want a roof rack or cargo box. Because of my lift, I can barely fit into parking garages as it is. Any extra height would just be a hassle. The only thing I'd like a roof rack for might be firewood and a jerry can, but it's not that big a hassle to just carry firewood inside the car. And because this car has a plastic bumper, it's my understanding that I couldn't use a high lift jack even if I wanted one. So I just carry this regular jack along with some blocks of wood to give it additional height. It's not fancy, but it works. And since I'm not into riding around on sand dunes or anything where you have to air down your tires, I didn't really see the need in splurging on an expensive air compressor. I just carry this small emergency compressor in case I get a flat, which with these tires isn't very often. And I don't need a ladder or a rooftop tent. I will never understand people's obsessions with rooftop tents. If I wanted to sleep in a tent, I could have saved $50,000 and bought a dang tent. I got a 4Runner because I wanted to be able to sleep in it, which it's very comfortable to do. And especially when I'm camping in grizzly country, I want some solid metal walls between me and the bears. I don't want to be a bear burrito, even if I am up on a roof. Speaking of sleeping in a 4Runner, that was my only complaint about my rig. Starting in 2016 or 17, they started making 4Runners with slide-out rear cargo decks. Basically, the rear cargo area slides out like a drawer, I guess to make it easier to access your gear. Well, for some dumb reason, this particular car didn't come with one. So when I tried laying down in it for the first time, there was an uncomfortable 2-inch dip where the folded down seat meets the cargo area. Even as someone with hips, it was super uncomfortable to lay on. But because the main reason I bought the dang car was to sleep in, I rigged up a solution. I found a tutorial on one of the 4Runner sites where a guy shows you how to make a platform out of plywood and 2x2s, which levels it out. And now it's very comfortable. At least it is for me. I'm only 5'3", so I'm able to stretch out straight. you might need to go diagonal. But that's the only build I really did to make my rig a comfortable place to camp. When I first got the car, I watched all these videos where guys showed you how to build all these storage units and sleeping platforms with drawers underneath for even more storage. And it was all a little overwhelming for someone like me with minimal carpentry skills and no tools. But I decided I didn't want a platform to sleep on. I'd rather have the extra headroom so that I can sit up fully in bed. It feels less claustrophobic this way. And besides, I figured out other methods of storage, as you'll see. Now, about camping in my 4Runner, I love it. Especially what they call boondocking, which is just camping out in the middle of nowhere instead of at a campground.
Sure, there's no toilets, no running water, no picnic tables, no fire rings. But that also means there's no charge, no reservations needed, and no crying babies camped 10 feet away from you.
I'm camping here in the Rocky Mountains in late July, just out in the middle of the woods off a Forest Service road. You can usually camp for free in any national forest at any pullout alongside a Forest Service road, or on BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management, aka federally owned public lands, which are maintained for recreational use. If neither of those are available, you can almost always sleep overnight in a rest area on an interstate, depending on what state you're in, or, as a last resort, in a Walmart parking lot. Almost all Walmarts allow overnight parking, and while it's not scenic, quiet, or private, at least you can get up in the morning and go use their bathroom and get some coffee. I've stayed at some Walmarts in my day, and it's definitely a last resort. I'd much rather just camp out here in the forest, even though this particular location doesn't have any cell signal, which sucks. When I'm traveling, I use this website called freecampsites.net. It's a user-generated database of places you can camp for free. People write little reviews of the sites they've stayed at so you can find out if the road is too rough for your car, and even if there's cell signal at a particular site. I use this website all the time, and I always try to leave my own reviews to help other travelers. My only gripe with the website is they don't have an app or even a mobile-friendly version, so it can be kind of a pain in the ass when you're trying to use it on your phone.
Anyway, once I've found a campsite, I look for a level place to park so I'm not rolling downhill all night.
I have a bubble level app on my phone that I use to help me get it right. Next, I open my tailgate and clean off my bumper. When I'm driving on dirt roads, it can get kind of dusty, and when I'm boondocking in an area with no picnic table, I use this as a prep area. So I just sweep it off using this little broom I got at the dollar store.
Now, my bed is already made. I take my sleep very seriously, so I'm not messing around.
You can lay out a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag and call it a day, but I like to be comfortable, even when I'm roughing it.
So I have an actual bed with sheets and everything.
Here's a cross-section of my bed. Here's the plywood sleeping platform I made following that 4Runner tutorial I was telling you about. I covered it with fabric just to be fancy.
I only made my platform half size. You can fold both back seats down if you want a full bed for two, but because I prefer to camp solo, I only use one side.
In a 4Runner, the back seats fold down in two sections. One side is about 2/3 the width of the car, so I fold that side down for sleeping, and I leave the other seat up because it gives me better storage. Then I got an old memory foam mattress topper from a friend that was getting rid of it, and because I'm only 5'3", I was able to cut it into thirds crosswise and stack the layers. I'd probably be even more comfortable if I had all 3 layers to sleep on, because I can still kind of feel the lump where my sleeping platform meets the folded down seat. But I didn't want to be greedy, so I gave the third part to my sister to use in her 4Runner. Hers is a 2005, before they started messing around with the cargo deck, so she has a more even surface. Then I made the bed with an old sheet and some blankets. One of my fans got me this awesome synthetic fuzzy Wonder Woman blanket, and I use it as a top sheet because it's so soft and cozy. Even up here at 10,000 feet, it kept me nice and warm last night.
Because it's summertime, I only have one other blanket on top of that,
but it's this awesome woven throw blanket a photographer once made for me of a photo he took of me. I'm not sure if he's still selling them. I'll try to find out and put a link to it in the description, along with links to all the other stuff I mentioned. That way, if you really want to, you can sleep with me too. Then I have my pillows, and I cover everything up with an extra blankie just to keep it clean. I also have these decorative throw pillows to use for lounging while I'm reading or working on my laptop, but they're not really pillows. They're pillow cases stuffed with extra clothing I might need that's too bulky for my clothes bag. Some hoodies, my rain shell, my fuzzy bathrobe in case I go to a hot spring. I keep them zipped up in here until I need to use them. I ordered these pillowcases off Amazon because I liked the color, but you can probably get them at Walmart or TJ Maxx or someplace like that. The rest of my clothes I keep in this bag on the back seat next to my bed. If I have stuff I don't want to get wrinkled, I hang that from my seat back. Or on the front seat, and I keep my hats there too. Now remember what I said about leaving the back seat up for better storage? Since the seat is up, I can use the floor space for my food bin. Just an old milk crate I use to store my cans and apples and stuff. I don't do much cooking, so I'm pretty minimalist. I usually just end up eating a lot of Frito pie. As for my shoes, I keep my hiking boots and other bulky stuff that I don't use as often in this suitcase. It's kind of like my little attic. I stow all the gear that I don't need in here, and because it's a hard-sided suitcase, it doubles as a little side table. I covered it with this wool Turkish poncho to be fancy. But I can also wear the poncho for warmth, or use it as an extra blanket if I need one. Now, speaking of Frito pie, I prefer to cook it on an open campfire. But if I'm in an area where I can't or I don't feel like making a fire, I can just heat my chili up on my backpacking stove, right here on my tailgate. Just be sure to take the label off first so it doesn't catch fire. I keep this area free so I can use it as a cook or prep area, even though it's right by my gas tank. Yikes! I make sure to keep a close eye on the stove, and I always leave my tailgate open for ventilation. I put this little doormat down to be fancy, like a little carpet. The rest of my kitchen stuff is in this plastic bin. I have a few of these bins, kitchen, my bathroom, and then another one for my flashlights and random odds and ends. First, we'll look inside my kitchen bin. I have my stove, which breaks down and packs in along with my cooking pot, into which I've scrunched my awesome squishy silicone bowl and cups, along with some lighters for my stove and some salt just in case. I have some dish soap, some sugar, salt, pepper, soy sauce, hot sauce, ketchup packets, some extra matches, can opener, knife, my trusty spork, koozie, some baby wipes, and of course, tea and coffee. Speaking of coffee, it's the main thing I use my stove for, boiling water. I've tried all kinds of methods of making coffee while camping, and instant coffee is just the easiest. Doesn't taste as good as the real thing, but it's worth saving the hassle in my book. I will say that instant Folgers is awful. I have it here for emergency use only. So if you can find instant Bustelo or instant Starbucks, they're better. Instant Starbucks is kind of expensive, and instant Bustelo can be kind of hard to find though. Anyway, I also made this windscreen for my stove to save fuel. If I shield my flame from the wind, my water heats faster and I save fuel. You just have to be careful that the fuel canister itself doesn't get too hot from the reflected heat, or it could potentially explode. So I made a second shield for the fuel canister to keep it from getting hot. I made both of these from a turkey roasting pan I bought at the dollar store following a tutorial I found online. The only bummer is I should have bought 2 pans because this one didn't end up being tall enough if I'm using one of the full-size fuel canisters. Dope! Since the small canisters are less cost-effective, I'd be better off just making a new windscreen. The other thing I mostly use my stove for, besides making coffee and heating up cans, is for washing up. Like I said, I like roughing it, but in style. I guess you could call it glamping. I admit it, I'm high maintenance, but I maintain myself without inconveniencing others. There's nothing like a hot, steamy washcloth on your face after a long day of adventuring. And I do it in the morning too, which brings me to my bathroom bin. In here, I keep all my hygiene and first aid stuff, as well as my lotions and potions, soap and washcloths. These pre-soaked Stridex pads are also great for camping, if, like me, you're acne prone. I can even charge my electric toothbrush here in my little outlet while I'm driving. In fact, I use it to charge my laptop too. I also have a little mirror in here, which I stick in the hinge here by the tailgate. It's not an ideal location since more than once I've forgotten it was there and closed or tried to close the tailgate and broke the mirror. That's 7 years bad luck each time. Yikes! This mirror here has a magnet on the back, but it's not very strong, so I don't even try to stick it to the side of the car. I'm working on a better solution. Anyway, my third bin is just where I keep all of my flashlights, my spare batteries, my satellite phone, just random odds and ends, headlamps. For whatever reason, I have a terrible time with headlamps and they never last very long, so I'm a big flashlight gal. In terms of storage, I do have a tiny bit of storage space underneath my sleeping platform between the 2x2s. It's not really big enough for much, but I use it to store an old cafeteria tray that I can use as a writing surface or even as a sort of TV tray if I'm laying in bed. Sometimes it's just really nice to have a flat surface. I got this idea, as well as the idea of putting coats in old pillowcases, from this awesome lady vandweller named Roxy that I saw on Bob Wells' Cheap RV Living channel once. He interviews all kind of vandwellers about their car camping hacks, and there's some really useful information on that channel. I think Roxy has a blog called something like Nomad for Nature. I'll try to look that up too, and I'll put a link in the description. Now, when I'm ready for bed, after I've washed up and hung my washcloth up to dry, I take out my window coverings. Now, obviously, if I'm stealth camping or staying in a Walmart parking lot or someplace like that, I'll put these up first thing for privacy. But if I'm out here in the middle of the woods all alone, sometimes I won't even put them up at all. But usually I stick them in my windows at bedtime. I made these using Reflectix, basically insulation made out of bubble wrap covered in Mylar. You can get it at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's something like $20 for a huge roll. I cut pieces to fit each window in my car, but I cut them a little bit too big so that they would wedge in and stay in place. I cut the one for the tailgate window in half because it was too big as one big piece and it kept falling out. To be extra fancy, I covered one side of these panels with black gaffer's tape, both to make the Reflectix more durable, but also with the idea of making these panels do double duty. I got the idea from some guy on one of the 4Runner forums, and it seemed solid. If I'm camping someplace hot, I can put the silver side of the panel out, reflecting all that solar radiation and keeping the interior of the car nice and cool. Or if I'm camping someplace cold, I can put the black side of the panel facing outward to absorb all of the solar radiation and keep the interior of the car nice and warm and toasty. The only problem with that is, it's kind of pointless. I only use these panels when I'm sleeping at night, and there's no solar radiation at night. And since gaffer's tape is kind of expensive, I don't know if it's really worth it. The one upside is privacy. My windows are already tinted pretty dark, but if I really want to be stealthy, like if I'm sleeping on a city street where no camping is allowed, if I put my panels up with a black side facing out, I pretty much achieve total blackout status, which is nice. Speaking of stealth camping, if I can't or don't want to get out of my car in the middle of the night to pee, then what do? It's a lot easier for guys. They can just stick the tip of their penis into a Gatorade bottle or something like that. It's a lot harder as a female. So I use one of these. I don't remember the brand name of this particular one, but it's great. Basically, it's like a little mini urinal or funnel that keeps the pee from splashing or running down your legs. So it goes down this tube right into your pee bottle. I used this screw top water bottle, but you can use pretty much anything with a lid since the funnel is so narrow. When you're done, you just close it back up and then dump it in a gas station bathroom when you get a chance. The device itself, I think people call it a sheenus or a shiwi, LOL, is made of some kind of squishy, water-repellent silicone material. So all you have to do is wipe it down with a baby wipe, and it stores almost anywhere. Super handy device to have. It's also useful if you're weird about public toilets or porta potties. Now you don't have to hover over the seat and make a mess for the rest of us. I don't remember the brand name of this exact one, but I'll try to look it up and put a link to it in the description. I know I used to have one from REI called a Freshette, and I do not recommend it. First of all, it wasn't squishy. It had this retractable tube, and I found it really hard to keep clean because it seemed like little drops of pee would always collect in the joint where the tube came out from the funnel. The other thing I do before bed is inflate my Lucy lantern. A solar-powered lantern that deflates so you can stick it on your dashboard to charge in the sun all day while you're driving. Then becomes an LED lantern at night. I have a few of them. Bright white, warm white, and my favorite, candlelight. This one puts off a nice warm glow, just like a real candle, and it even flickers like one. It makes the inside of my rig feel very cozy, and as a bonus, it's not bright enough to attract any bugs, which I certainly don't want in my car after I close the tailgate to go to sleep. I also keep some gear on the passenger seat next to me, basically just stuff I can't fit anywhere else. On this trip, I happen to have some extra camping gear in case I want or need to tent camp, plus some materials related to this treasure I'm searching for. And you never know when you'll need to perform an emergency exorcism. Just kidding, I got that from a friend I was visiting. I also have a mini cooler up here. At the beginning of this trip, I thought it would be nice to have perishable foods like cheese and veggies, but I quickly realized what a pain in the ass it is to keep getting ice, so I gave up. If I had a better quality cooler, like a Yeti that supposedly keeps ice longer, I might do it. But as it is, I'm just using this crummy cooler as dry storage. I do have a mini Yeti on my Amazon wish list, so who knows? Some generous fan might hook it up so that I can have cheese and veggies someday. Finally, down here on the passenger side floor, I keep all my emergency supplies in a giant bucket. Duct tape, a first aid kit, a tow strap, shovel, gloves, 4-way wrench, and jumper cables. The usual. But what if my battery dies way out here in the boonies and there's no one around to give me a jump? Well, I can jumpstart my own damn self using this. This one here is called a jump pack, and it's made by Cobra. It's basically an external battery pack like you would use to charge your phone. But it has enough power, if it's fully charged, to start a dead car battery. I was pretty skeptical myself until I was at a festival one time and 2 of my friends had dead batteries. And I was able to start both their cars on just one charge from this little thing. And one of the cars was an SUV and the other one was a minivan, so I think they were both 6 cylinders. It's pretty impressive. You can use it to charge your cell phone too. It's super useful to have. Anyway, there you have it. That's how I roll when I'm boondocking in my Toyota 4Runner, which I love even more after driving it for over a year. I'm 100% satisfied with my purchase. I had considered getting a Jeep or a pickup truck, but the quality, reliability, off-roading ability, and comfort of the 4Runner was really my best option. All that's left to do is give her a name, and for some reason, I'm having a tough time coming up with something that fits. When I first got the car last summer, I called her the Terry Scant, after a line in the poem Forrest Fenn wrote about the hidden treasure I'm looking for. But that didn't really seem to fit. Then I thought about calling her the Love Unlimited, after the singer Barry White's orchestra, but that didn't really seem to fit either since she's such a gas guzzler that she probably contributes more to war than love. Now I'm considering calling it Moby Dick, since it's kind of like a great white whale. Well, white underneath all that mud. You'll just have to take my word for it. But that's the nice thing about being in Colorado. Up here in the Rocky Mountains in summertime, it rains pretty much every afternoon. So before you know it, my rig will be clean as a whistle and ready to get muddy again on my next adventure.